Hi, everybody.
Hi, welcome back to the Justice and Faith Show. Today's topic is pretty spicy. It's a hot topic for a lot of people, and we're titling this "Are you a wife or a wifey?"
So, in today's society, it's very prevalent, especially in more urban cultures or black cultures, but all over, where you're saying somebody is something that they're not, essentially. So, me and Faith are married. We're legally married. There's paperwork that says Faith, just a speller, right? There are people who live together and they've been living together for a few years or maybe even a decade or so. And what happens is they start saying, oh, that's hubby, or that's the wife, or that's just as good. And that's just not factual. And so one of the things I wanted to dive into is the fact that a lot of women who have issues with men, they have to truly understand the fact that you're giving them stuff that they don't deserve.
Right.
They haven't earned it. They haven't earned the right for you to follow their lead. They haven't earned the right for you to acquiesce to their leadership and things like that because they're not your husband. And the same thing as far as men are concerned. Sometimes women are a little bit more, I don't know the word, women are not going to listen to you because they don't have that legal, that standpoint of you're my husband. Hubby and wifey, like wifey is a thing that people just say to make you feel better. It really is, women. So if somebody's saying, oh, that's wifey, or is that wifey and stuff, wifey doesn't exist legally.
Right.
Wife
Right.
is a legal term. So when you say somebody's wife or that's hubby or that's bae, you're kidding yourselves. I'm sorry. And that's why she said it's spicy because people
Right.
don't want to hear the truth.
Well, and it's also because you can have wifey or you can have bae or you can have those things, but if you think that's the same thing as a husband or a wife, then that's where it becomes a problem. Like you can have a bae, you can have a boyfriend or girlfriend, a significant other, but if you start treating them as if you would treat them if they were your husband or your wife, that's where the problem lies. Because you can't be, like he said, you can't be a husband or a wife without the legal documentation, without going through the marriage. And basically, even if you're living together long term for years and years, you have kids together, you have this life together that you've built, you're still basically, like, for all intents and purposes, your roommates.
Or boyfriend and girlfriend. And as you get older, you don't want to be a 40-year-old and be like, yeah, that's my girlfriend, or that's my boyfriend. But from a standpoint of if something happened to me and we were just dating or something like that, she doesn't have certain rights to get certain information.
Right.
If she calls up and she's like, yeah, my name's Faith Detweiler, and it's like, well, who are you to Justice? I'm his girlfriend. They may not release information. Right. But as my wife, she can get information. Yes. As her husband, I could get information that people don't think about those types of things. If something happened to me, and there needs to be like, hey, not necessarily next of kin, but hey, you're the emergency contact, and this is the level of information we can reveal to a sister, or brother, a mother, a father, a wife.
Yeah.
Typically, there's nothing that outlines a girlfriend or a boyfriend. Yeah. So, like she said,
there's levels to boyfriend and girlfriends. Like you can have a boyfriend or girlfriend that you just met, or or you can have multiple boyfriends or girlfriends nowadays. Like that's why there's not that legal standpoint as far as boyfriend and girlfriend, because that's so vague. Like when you put husband and wife on that's a title and that's something you can like stand on. So that's, I think, the biggest difference when it comes to like legal documentation and stuff. When you're husband or wife, that's like something you've committed to this person.
Yeah. Now, so we're very much understanding that people are taking longer to date and before they get married. It makes a lot of sense. I agree with that. Date as long as you can. However, once again, if we stand on the Christian principles, this makes things even harder. If you're dating, you're not living together, which means you're not cohabitating, you're not having sex. So if you're going 2, 3, 4, 5 years without dealing with these things, then, and I'm talking about scripturally based. So Faith was a virgin when I met her. If we were dating for 4 or 5 years, that's especially with my background, it's very difficult, and you have to understand that. So some people go, well, we're as good as married, so it kind of justifies their behavior. It justifies the fact that they're sharing a bed. It justifies the fact that they're engaging in sexual activity. It justifies a lot of different things.
And it kind of cheapens, for all intents and purposes, it almost like cheapens marriage. because if people can be quote unquote as good as married without being married, it makes it so like, why would you even go through with the marriage? Like, people try to, like you said, justify and make excuses and say, well, if we get married, we don't have this or we won't have that, or I want to still have my freedom. Like, not being married, it's much easier, whether or not you have stuff together, you have kids together, it's much easier to part ways if you're not married, because you don't have any legal binds to that person other than your property and maybe children. I mean, that's a little harder, but like, that's still easier than if you're married.
Right.
So we actually looked up some stuff because we were like really interested in this topic, and we wanted to make sure that we had some actual data to give you guys along this lines, because in just our lifetime, we are both early 30s. A lot of people have started waiting longer to get married or not getting married at all and just cohabitating. So we looked up some stats and some figures to let you guys know, like, this is something that's becoming increasingly accepted by the masses. So this first thing, it says about 4 in 10 cohabitating adults. So they asked, like, this is out of 10 people, 4 of them that were cohabitating cite finances and convenience as the major reason why. And like, that makes sense. Like, today, life is not cheap. It's not easy to do it by yourself. If you can have another person contributing to the finances, why wouldn't you? So it makes sense on a like very logical standpoint. But again, convenience and finances, that kind of sounds like a roommate to me. It doesn't sound like you could do that with a roommate. You don't have to do that with your significant other. And then among married and cohabitating adults, love is cited more than any other reason for why they decided to get married or to move in with their partner. So 90% of those are married and 73% of those are living with their partner. So,
they say love was a major factor in their decision. So
yeah.
Essentially what it's saying is that 40% out of 10, 40% of people are saying that finances or some level of convenience is the reason. While you look at the other 60%, whether they're married or cohabitating, they say love is the reason for what they're doing.
Yeah.
So historically, people think that marriage was very much love-based. If you really understand history, you understand that marriage historically really has nothing to do with love. That's something that we kind of created over time. There's a lot of arranged marriages in most cultures, and it's typically like, you know, if I'm a king and you have a like you want my son, my royalty is picking your daughter, and they're increasing your level of life. So you're willing to say, hey, here's my daughter, or whatever the case may be. She doesn't have to love me. She could love the cobbler down the street. But because I'm the prince and I'm the king, or whatever the case may be, then my ability to get her in multiples, because once again, history presents that you have multiple wives. It's just over time we've created this thing where it's like, because it's forever. It's your lifetime. You want to be with somebody who you like, you care about, you love, you have things you share in common. So there's not an issue. So we're not condemning people who want to live together and be together. I've cohabitated with people before, and I understand the need for it. We didn't. And honestly, and I'm going to be 100% honest here, I wish we did. Because there's things that I've learned in time of us cohabitating that I learned after we were married. And it's just like some things you're just like, well, if you clip your toenails in the kitchen, I can't go, I'm going to divorce you because you clip your toenails in the kitchen. But if I know that beforehand, I can make the decision as to, can I deal with this for the rest of my life if you're not willing to compromise with this particular thing? So I definitely understand why it's a longer process for people to, you know, date and to do these things. However, what the issue is, once again, is when people start walking around saying that's wifey. Like, Faith has never been wifey. Faith was my girlfriend. Then she became my fiance. Then she became my wife. I don't ascribe to wifey. I believe, personally, wifey is a cheap way of saying, yeah, I want you to do everything a wife's supposed to do without actually committing to you the way that I need to. Because like Faith said, if you aren't a husband, you can get away, you can do certain stuff. And everything is wrong, right? Whether you're married or not. But if you're like, hey, we're just dating, and you start messing with another chick, it's not called adultery, it's fornication. You've been fornicating anyway, but it's just fornication. So it's an extended fornication. If you're married and you commit adultery, there's different things that can happen as a result. So you kind of justify it like, well, we're not married. I could talk to other chicks or I could talk to other guys because we're not married. And it's like, wait a minute. You were just saying I'm like your husband. I'm like your wife. Once you get to a certain age, people, stop it. If you're dating someone, boyfriend, girl, whatever you want to title them and label them, I mean, that's fine. But do not use the terms husband and wives. That, to me, I kind of correlate that to when people say I have a dog or I have a cat and they're like my kids, right? That's fine. If if you don't have children and you take care of them and you love them and blah, blah, blah. But when you say it's just like raising a kid, it's not. It's not. Like, I'm not going to sit up here and blow smoke up anybody's butt. Like, if you have a dog or a cat, your dog and cat is never going to walk into your room and say, I had a nightmare. Never. They're never going to walk into your room and say, I was bullied at school. They're never going to walk into your room and say, I'm hungry. They're never going to walk into your room and say, I need new shoes.
Yeah.
You know, you're not raising your dogs to go out and live a life and get a house and all these. You're not doing those types of things. So we need to stop with these like what you said, we're cheapening relationships. We're devaluing them. And that's why when people do get married or they see married people, they're going, oh, I don't want to do that because we're already cheating. It's like, I'm getting all this. I don't know how many guys I know, and I'm trying not to be crude, but guys that aren't worth the level of what some women are willing to give to them. And these women give and they give and they give and they give. And they keep giving to these guys who aren't worth it. Then they finally find a man who is worth it. They don't give the same way. So this guy who didn't work, who didn't do anything, you gave him everything. But when you find a good guy, you don't give him anything. He has to work harder when he does more. And it's because you have worked so long giving yourself, giving your body, giving your mind, giving everything to these other people who have slowly taken pieces of you.
Right.
Because you were wifey. And they said wifey, and you liked that. You liked the term of being wifey without having a ring. How many women justify not having a ring on their finger? He calls me wife. I'm just like his wife. We're together all the time. That doesn't mean anything.
Right. No, and it's sad in certain aspects because it is, you're demeaning yourself by doing everything a wife is supposed to do for like none of the commitment. Like, I'm sorry, a boyfriend or a girlfriend or someone you live with, like, it's none of the commitment. Like, he can leave super easy. Like, even if you are married, it's still possible. But none of the commitment is happening, and you're giving all of the benefits and all of
So why should you have to do more? If you're already giving us that, why do more?
Right. Like, if you're already getting all of the benefits.
Why marry you?
Exactly.
I could be engaged to you for 10 years and we're together.
Keep stringing you along.
Yeah, keep stringing you along. Is there some women who are willing to accept that? Because one, we don't want to be lonely. Especially when you get older.
Oh my gosh, that's definitely a thing. You don't want to be lonely.
Until you accept what's given.
You don't want to start all over again, especially if you've been with someone for so long. You're comfortable with that person. You know that person. You know what to expect from that person. And like, whether or not he's giving you all of himself or just part of himself, some of him is better than none of someone else. Right. And being just alone. So, like, I get it. It's not that we're sitting here saying we don't understand why people cohabitate and why, but it's just we want to make sure that, like, we want to be real and, like, make sure people know marriage is marriage. And it's a commitment that two people make. And if you're doing it the way that we've did it, you're making a commitment with God and, like, your family and everybody. It's a very, like, all-encompassing thing, whereas cohabitation is not. It's just not. So, and we have more stats that we pulled up. So the share of U.S. adults who are currently married has declined modestly in recent decades, from 58% in 1995 to now it's 53% today over the same period. The share of adults who are living with unmarried partner has risen from 3% to 7%, while the share who are currently cohabitating remains far smaller than the share who are married. The share of adults 18 to 44 who have ever lived with an unmarried partner, 59% has surpassed the share who have ever been married. So
essentially what that says is that there's more, even though in the grand scheme of things there's a lot more married people than there were, there's way more people who are living together and cohabitating, which, once again, before faith, like I have, so in my adult life, I've cohabitated for more than a year with two women. And honestly, if Faith didn't push, we might still be just cohabitating. Because I am not against waiting, but also, once again, when you add the Christian and the Christian principle in it. So me and Faith ended up kind of going to this level of getting remarried because she was uncomfortable with the fact we were living together and we weren't married, which I understood. But at the same time, I also understood, hey, we go our separate ways and you live there and I live here, it's likely not going to work out just because of just different circumstances. So, you know, we had to come to a mutual decision of what we were going to do. However, I wasn't in a rush to get remarried because I needed to really know who she was. I needed to know who she was. We were married and we lived together, but like it, once again, for those of you who followed us, it didn't work out the best the first time.
And 3 years had passed too before we got back together, so both of us had changed a lot. So I understood where he was coming from, but it didn't make me any less uncomfortable. And so one more thing I wanted to read that I felt was pretty interesting. Amid changes in marriage and cohabitation, wide acceptance of cohabitation, even as many Americans see societal benefits in marriage. So in 2002, only 54% of people ever cohabitated. And then magnify that number for 2013, it went up to 59%. So it did go up. And even in number of people who, even if you never planned on getting married, because that used to be a stipulation. People thought, oh yeah, it's fine as long as you're planning to get married someday, or if you're engaged. That's when they would be like, that's fine to cohabitate. But now, those numbers have changed.
It's an end to justify means. Like I'm pulling back the curtain on some stuff. For some things and for some people, it's an end to justify means. The first time I cohabitated with somebody, no, that wasn't even, the first time it was my child's mother. And that was for what it was. It was supposed to be to grow and cultivate and grow that family. And then the second time was after we were divorced. And once again, same reason, kind of different results and things like that. But the goal was never to go elsewhere or do anything else like that. The goal was always to stay there and then eventually get married and whatever. But there's a level of convenience that comes with things too. As I said, with me and Faith, the convenience came with, hey, at one point we lived, I forgot how far, we lived a considerable distance from each other. And if I lived here and she lived there, me being who I am and she being who, that distance would not work well for us because we're already opposites and there's so many things that were working against us. So we had to make a different decision. Some people have more decisions to make. Some people have less. And what happens is it's very convenient to just go, I've heard people, you know, hey, as long as that person comes up with the other half of the rent, we're good. Like, and they are essentially roommates. They might be roommates who have sex from time to time. They might be roommates who have kids. They might be roommates who, hell, I've cohabitated with people and we weren't really together, quote unquote, and tried to live our own lives and stuff. That doesn't work either. And when it comes down to it, you really have to value who you are and what you really want. But it like Faith said, it's hard. It's very difficult. If you're out here making $10 an hour, you're not going to have that many options as to where you can live and what you can do. So if you got a person, somebody can share that burden. You're like, hey, I kind of like you. We have some history. I'd rather be with you and have help with the kids or something like that than be by myself and whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. So it's very serious. But once again, this is about wife versus wifey. And we're saying wife versus wifey because for men, it doesn't necessarily work the same way. Like a woman will claim and latch onto a man and just be fine with that. But I wanted to really highlight the fact that a lot of women are settling for less. Not saying that being a wife makes you a higher value woman if you're single. What I'm saying is that if you're with a man, right, and you've been with him for 6 years and he's saying he wants to marry, this is the difference. He says he wants to marry you, but he keeps stringing you along like, I'm waiting until I get the right ring. I'm waiting until I can afford a better house. I'm waiting until I get a better job. That's all bullshit. Sorry, I cursed. Okay. But it is. If I gave you, somebody said this, I saw somebody and it was like, if I gave you, this is the blade of grass test, like if I gave you a blade of grass that I wanted to marry you, how you react, it shows whether I want to marry you or not. And I was like, well, that's a little extreme. But if I give you a ring and I'm really like, heartfelt, I thought about how I wanted to propose to you and you go, I need a better ring. that's already telling me that I don't need to marry you.
Right.
Because it's not about the ring. It's about the commitment. It's about the thought. It's about all these different things. And I've seen guys go, I've literally seen a guy go into debt, lose his wife to infidelity, and come close to committing suicide. Because he decided he wanted to spend however much on the ring, because he knew how she was. He presented her with one ring. She said no. Because of the ring, came back with the ring. She said yes. She cheated on him, left him for the other guy, got alimony and child support, and he was in debt for that ring and stuff like that. Came close to committing suicide. Just because, so I see what happens with men a lot of times. We're like, we don't want to commit. I'm not going to sit up here and mince words. It's not easy, man. It's not easy being married. It's not easy when you're really trying to be a real man and a good man and stuff. It's not easy some days because you have to love and lead even when you don't feel like it. It's a lot easier when you're just a hubby, when you're bae.
On the flip side, for women out there who are married, like, you're not alone if you're having issues like with your self-esteem or with your just feeling like you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. There's a lot of pressure on women in marriage, just in general, with like just keeping it all together. It falls on the woman to keep the family together, keep the house going. Like, not necessarily as much in our marriage, because he does a lot that is typically like quote unquote the women's work. But a lot of pressure is on the women to keep things together and just keep the family moving in the right direction. And there's just unseen things that just fall on the women. And you're not alone if you feel that pressure, if you feel sometimes like there's one day that you just feel, I didn't do anything right. And it's just, but you have to just keep on going. Don't let that one bad day or maybe bad week or bad month, like who knows how bad it's going to be. You can't let that just sit on you and just keep you down and keep it going in that direction. You have to find something good in every day to be like, okay, I may not have done this, or this, but I made the bed this morning. Or I may not have done this, or this, but I went for a 5-minute, 10-minute walk. Like something that you did do that helped you, helped your husband, helped your kids, helped something in your life so that you can have a small victory. And each small victory is going to help kind of snowball effect and get bigger victories. But the last bit of just actual technical data we wanted to share with you about this is people are also waiting a lot longer before they get married than they used to. Back in the day, I can't remember the dates, but people would get married much younger, like in their, oh, there we go, yes. So people now are getting married on average about 31 years old. So that's women are typically about 31.
And you're 32.
And men are getting married around 33.
And I'm 33.
Compared to what was 22 years old for women and 24 years old for men. And that was back in 71. So 1971, the ages were 22 and 24. And now it's all the way up to 31 and 33. So people are waiting much longer before they get married.
So, and where it says next is apparently the majority of people are looking at marriage as a partnership they want to enter into, which is always good to hear. Nearly 85% say they discussed marriage before the proposal, and 83% felt no pressure to get married. So one of the important things is the partnership. If you're not, and when I say equally yoked, I don't mean after the marriage you're supposed to be equally yoked. As a married man who's married to somebody who's not like me in any way, once again, I'm going to go back to the fact that I understand why people take longer to get married, why they take longer and they want to cohabitate, even though it goes against Christian values. This is where the Bible and things like that kind of puts me in a tailspin, because I would much rather have lived with the person that I wanted than to just go, we've dated, we've never spent the night together, we've never done these things, and then marry you and then find out like sexually, there's no compatibility. As far as how we live, there's no compatibility. As far as how we think, there's no compatibility, because when you're dating, you're only going to see, typically you see the best version of themselves. When you live together and there's problems and there's adversity that comes, you don't know until after the fact. And so that's another reason why people go, I'm not even going to get married. You look at a celebrity example like Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell. were they 40 years or something like that? They've never gotten married. From a personal perspective, I have no problem with that. Once again, when we go back to the biblical perspective, it is totally different. So if you're somebody who's claiming to be Christian and you're just living with somebody and you're having sex with them and you're doing all these different things, you're living in sin. And it's a different kind of sin because you know you're doing it. And you know that it's wrong. And you're claiming that somebody's a wife or a husband when they're not. So it's kind of like, what are you going to do? If you're saying wife and bae and hubby, that's fine. But if you're also claiming Christianity, these are the things that become problematic, because then you have younger people or other people looking at you and you're an example. It's like, that guy, he is a member of the church, he's a deacon, but he's living with Sister Faith and they're not married. And so they come to church all the time and they're not married. They've been coming for 3-4 years. They live together. There's a
and people new to the church see that, or kids or teens see that and they're like, oh, see, it's not that big of a deal.
So you can't. And we learned that when we were married the first time, and it was just kind of like, I remember like wanting her to spend the night, and she was like, I can't because somebody might see. We had neighbors, actually, I had neighbors in an apartment complex I lived in that lived across from us, and I remember one time she came over and it was late, maybe it was snowing, the weather was, and I was like, you should just stay over. She's like, I can't, I want to. And I'm just like, this doesn't make any damn sense. We're not having sex. You just stay over. And she just refused to stay over.
Well, because that's the biggest thing. Like, there is nothing in the Bible that's against cohabitation. There's nothing in the Bible that says that. However, if you're in a relationship with someone, you love them, you're sexually attracted to them, like, it just makes that much easier to happen. So it's more so about just staying away from the temptation so it doesn't accidentally happen or like whatever. So you don't put yourself in a position that you could potentially do something you will regret, or even make the perceived, like if people see and think and assume that you're doing something, even if you're not, that in itself, it says don't cause your brother to stumble. Like if there's something, you have to take it out of your own eye before you take it out of their eye. So if you're doing something that someone can see, and even if they don't know anything about you, like they're just my neighbor, they don't talk to me, they don't do anything, they just see me, but they know that I'm a Christian for whatever reason, and they see me staying over with my boyfriend, and they don't know what happens behind closed doors, but we are boyfriend and girlfriend, we're in love with each other, they've seen me kiss him, hold his hand, they're going to assume that we are having sex. So then that just makes me, as a Christian woman, look a certain type of way. So that's where the cohabitation and not being married, that's where the problem lies.
So essentially what it comes down to is if you're cohabitating, you're not married, if you have no plans on getting married, do you really need to evaluate your spirituality if you're claiming to be a Christian?
Yeah.
That's facts. I don't care if you agree. I don't care if you don't like me. I don't care if you don't like what I'm saying. Go to the document. Go to the scripture. It says it. That's it. And there's a difference between the daily sin that we all have inside of us and actually living in sin. And living in sin when me and Faith could have lived together for 2 years and never had sex. But granted, we're probably doing other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? And people try to justify, oh, we didn't have sexual intercourse, but we did these things. And it's like, that's still sexually immoral. I don't think that the scripture says, oh, well, we only touched each other here a little bit, so on and so forth, so we didn't do this, so it doesn't really matter. We figure out, as human beings, we figure out any way we can and not be wrong.
Yeah. We
will take anything that we can and go, oh, it's not right, and justify it. But when it really comes down to the truth is the truth. And like she said earlier, there's no issue with somebody saying bae or wifey or whatever the case may be if you keep it in the correct context. If you're not a Christian, if you got a boyfriend or girlfriend, you want to call them, but I'm like, when you call women, I'm telling you, I've seen women in their 40s get called wifey. Women who've been married twice, and they get called wifey, and they say, oh, he called me wifey. That's bae, that's hubby. I make sure he's taken care of, and then you give that to that man, and then you're like 3, 4, 5 years later, you 45 now. And it's like, wait a minute, like he said he was going to marry me. He said he was going to do all these things. And you giving him all the best parts of yourself, and then he leaves you. Whose fault is that? Like, people aren't willing to hear these types of things. Like, whose fault is it? You gave that to him because you had an expectation that man never said. He said wifey, and you just, you melted. That man never had an intention of marrying you. Because once you start saying, you're just as good as my wife, once a man hits you with that,
Yeah.
Because there ain't no just as good as my wife. That's just it. My wife's my wife. There's nobody just as good as my wife. Like, we're dating, you're my girlfriend. Oh, and you want to reap all the benefits, but you don't want to do any of the work. Being a husband is not easy. Being I don't want to say righteous, but being a good man and a husband is not easy. It's not easy work. It goes against everything biologically that we feel. So when you go, oh, that's wifey, but then you're still living with your impulses, you're still living with your feelings and stuff like that, you're not, I'm sorry. And I'm not going to accept it. As a married man who does the things I need to do, I can't accept people walking around here claiming to be husbands and hubbies and they deserve and they should be the authority over the household. Miss me with all of that. Like, I've been on a kick recently with a lot of stuff because I've been really diplomatic with the way I've been thinking about stuff, but it's not fair. It is not fair that there's women, great women, who are walking around getting called wifey, and they're accepting that because they don't have any other options in their mind. So they're accepting mediocrity. They're accepting less than what they deserve. And there's men walking around with their chest poked out. Yeah, I'm like her husband. She should know she don't owe you nothing. She doesn't owe you any kind of authoritative. If she talks back to you and stuff, it's because you're not her husband. If she doesn't agree with you, it's because you're not her. You can't lead her. You can't lead her.
She doesn't have to talk to you about any life decisions. She doesn't have to talk to you. Like, there's nothing.
They're separate entities.
Yeah.
She doesn't. You're not equally yoked.
She has her life. You have your life, and
even if you live together. So.
Yeah. But yeah, we had this kind of heavy on ourselves and our minds recently, just really wanting to get this out there because this is a big topic, like we said in the beginning. So take it for what it is.
Yeah.
This is something that we just really wanted to talk about. So with that being said, we will wrap up. We hope you got something out of it. Thank you so much to our new subscribers. We do have some new subscribers on YouTube. Thank you so much. Hi, holla. And if you are just listening to this on the podcast, sorry, it's been a couple weeks. We have done some interviews that we weren't able to upload on Anchor or Spotify or anything. So if you want to see those, you can go head over to our YouTube channel.
And if you just want more content, just go over to our social media platforms. There's going to be more for the next couple of months. But just go to the Faith for Justice show, go to the Faith Speller, go to Justice Speller or Diamond Wolf, and you can see our content. So not necessarily this. You might not be able to drive and hear it, but we're going to be doing some more stuff, but we're trying to get more couples in to talk about their experiences so you're not just hearing from us, because we don't want you to think this is just our perspective from our experiences. We want you to hear real life testimonials and things from other people so you can understand, like, man, this life we live is not easy. It's not for the weak of heart, but if you do the things that you're supposed to do, then it's worth it. It's worthwhile. But we never want to demoralize and make people less than what they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
All right.
Our thing is we want to empower everybody to be the best version of themselves that they can. Health-wise, relationship-wise, spiritually, literally every aspect. We just want to help get you to the best version of yourself as we're trying to get there for ourselves. So until next time, maintain your justice.
And keep your faith strong.